Hi guys, thanks so much for joining us. I'm just going to give everybody like 2 minutes to get logged in because I know we've still got a couple people coming. So 2 minutes and we'll get started. For you guys just hopping on, we're just going to give everybody 2 minutes to get checked in here, make sure we're not missing anybody, and then we'll get rolling. Let's see. Okay, awesome. So in the interest of time, we're going to get rolling. I'll be multitasking a little bit, admitting people, so bear with me through that. Or if by chance somebody's locked out, just shoot me a message in the chat just in case I miss it, because I'm going to be pulling up some visual things to make this a little more interactive. So for those of you guys that I don't know, my name's Kaillie Kelly. I own a company that does like club teams and training clinics called Central Lacrosse. I'm also Paul Griffin's kind of right. I don't even know what my job is with Paul. I just help him with whatever he needs. I'm the ref assigner for the South, and I'm responsible for the first and second grade pilot program that we did. So any questions on that, I'm definitely your point of contact. But in general, if you need something and you're having a hard time getting a hold of Paul, or you don't want to bug Paul, I'm happy to help in any way that I can. We're going to leave tonight pretty open-ended. The intention is really just to have a conversation about rules. So I have a couple of things I'm going to show you specifically just about things that I know are common questions. But for the most part, it's just going to be open-ended and you guys can kind of dictate the conversation. We'll mostly just be opening it up for a Q&A because I definitely don't want to just be reading to you off a slide. And I'm sure you would appreciate that I not read to you as well. So let me see here. We're just going to pull up the rules card. So this is the most up-to-date, and I'll say the official rules card for all of our leagues across the state, which we're pretty excited about so that there's consistency, and hopefully that'll make our application of the rules as officials and your understanding of the rules as coaches and spectators a little smoother. So this is what we're kind of gunning for. We've recommended to the refs, like, print it, carry it. It's posted on the Founders website. I would highly recommend always having this with you because it's a quick, simple way to just take a look and make sure that we're doing things the right way, especially since we've all had a year off. And for some of us, we're back or we're at this for the first time. It can be a lot to digest. So this rule card is going to be a huge helper for us. Big things that are changing this year, primarily, free movement is in. So if you came from kind of the old school of thought where on every whistle we were standing still, that's gone. There are exceptions to that rule, but primarily we're trying to get the girls up and moving as much as possible. So anytime there's a foul inside of the critical scoring area, which is kind of the 8 meter, the 12 meter, and the area behind the goal. So those like the semicircle basically that outlines our goal circle. Anything that happens in there, regardless of severity, is going to be a whistle start. Anything outside of that, with a couple of exceptions, is going to be a self start where basically I make a call as the official, the girl who's going to get the ball picks it up, and as soon as she starts going, we're live. The defense, just like before, the defense does have to make an effort. So if we're calling, let's say it's going to be blue ball on an empty stick check, red still needs to move 4 meters away, but once I start as the ball carrier, we're live. So there's no non-engagement area like what there is in field hockey. It's just once the offense starts, whether she starts running or whether she makes a pass from a stationary position, her initiating the play is what brings us live. The only weird thing to know about that is, so let's say I'm calling an empty stick check, I'm getting the ball, you move 2 meters away and you're on your way further and I start. that plays live. So if your offensive player chooses to start, it's a live play from wherever the defense is. So that's kind of the only thing that's a little tricky with that. But for the most part, if we're close to the goal, it's a whistle. If we're a little further out, it'll just be a self-start that we can get them moving as quickly as possible. And then the other exceptions is that we're going to have a whistle start on anything where a clock stops, which really doesn't happen a ton in youth lacrosse. Hopefully we never have cards, but if there's a card, those are always going to be whistle starts. If there's an injury, we stop the clock, that would be a whistle start. And offside is always a whistle start. But everything else, our focus is really on trying to get the kids up and running as quickly as possible. There have been some changes with the standards for equipment. I know Paul sent out information on it, but just be aware that if your goalie shows up with helmets and chest protectors that look like something we would have worn when we were playing, it's probably not going to be legal because we weren't always the safest when we were playing. So just have that on your radar. We won't be doing stick checks at any level at youth lacrosse. So when we do, it's going to be really important that we just have productive captains or coaches conversations. We're advising the refs to be there 15 minutes early. They'll walk the field, just make sure that there's nothing crazy. And then bring in the coaches about 10 minutes before the start of the game, just to ensure that all safety standards are met. So coaches, the first thing the ref should say to you is, "Coach, are all players legally certified for play today?" You say yes, and that's basically just saying you're certifying that their goggles are on, the helmets are legal if they're wearing one, the goalie equipment's legal, their sticks are legal, and that's mostly so that we can speed things up and eliminate any additional COVID challenges. So instead of having the refs individually inspect your players, you guys are just going to say, "Hey, we checked it out, we're good to go." So just expect that in those conversations and make sure that you are meeting with the refs just so that we can ensure that we're all on the same page, especially because we're all going to have questions with this kind of being our first year in this new world. What else is noteworthy here? We'll talk about, so we're not going to do 5th and 6th grade. We'll be doing modified checking. I'm going to talk about modified checking and show you a little video just to eliminate any questions on that in a moment. The one thing to think about, I know within town lacrosse, there's varying degrees of skill. So you may have kids who have been playing clubs since the 3rd grade and are quite controlled and quite skilled at checking. And you may have kids that you're like, "Oh my God, please don't ever let her check. Like, this would be a disaster." There is the option of bringing in full checking for 7-8 select. One thing to know about that is if there are junior officials on the game, even if they're experienced seniors, we can never, ever, ever have full checking. So there has to be adult refs on the game for that to be an option. If you guys feel comfortable with it and the refs are at a level where they're good to go on that, it's certainly an option with select, but let's just be mindful of the fact, like, we hear a lot about coaches pushing for checking when we have like sophomores on their games at the like 5th grade level. And we just want to eliminate those situations as much as possible. So if you've got adults, sure. But if you have juniors, they know not to, and we'd appreciate your support on that just so that we can keep our refs happy and keep the games going without incidents. The 3 pass rule, so maybe something that's a little bit noteworthy here. The goalie pass is included in the count. So if you're playing at a level where you have a goalkeeper in and she throws the ball, that attempt does count as 1. So it doesn't have to be over the restraining line. And then the only other scenario that is a little peculiar with that, I'll try to say this in as few words as possible. So if I am playing, if I throw the ball out on a clear, my teammate catches it, she makes the pass to another teammate and it's intercepted by the team that was riding, they're allowed to shoot right away. They don't, if they'd already completed their 3 passes, because it's before the restraining line. If that same scenario happens, so they have their 3 passes, they get a shot, I make a save, I throw it, that's 1. She throws it to my other teammate over the restraining line, that's 2. And there's a turnover, the whole shot clock would reset. So if you're successful in the ride before the halfway line, you're allowed to shoot right away. If that made no sense to you, please feel free to shoot me an email and I can break it down. I just don't want to throw too much at you guys, but those are kind of in my experience. Those are usually the things that get me yelled at when I come to a youth field because they're a little bit peculiar. So remembering those is great. I'm just going to check in on a couple of questions that we've received so far. So one of the questions, will referees help the 3rd and 4th grade with self-start and free movement? Absolutely. So our guidance to the refs has been, and our guidance to the coaches would be the same, like, now more than ever, we're in this thing together. So we've really tried to stress with the officials the importance of relationships, particularly at the 1st through 4th grade level, where we just want these kids to have fun and play in a safe environment. So being open, treating it as you would summer camp, treating it as you would coaching in your little town programs is sort of how we've advised our junior refs to approach this stuff. So with that in mind, we've kind of told them, like, this is new. This self-start stuff is new. It's going to be new for the coaches. We've advised the officials to be super patient and try not to use their voices to trigger it. So for example, if I call a foul in the critical scoring area, and as an official, I know that that's going to be a whistle start, I'm going to try to say to the players right away, tweet, blue ball on the 8 meter, this is going to be a whistle start, just to help them kind of get used to those scenarios, especially in the beginning. And we'd encourage you guys to do the same. Like, I coach high school, and as soon as I see a whistle in the critical scoring area, I'm screaming whistle start to my kids immediately, because I don't want that, depending on how, I would suspect that our guidance has been, let's be patient. Nobody's trying to get this wrong in the beginning, but by the book, it is technically a change of possession if someone were to start too early. So with that in mind, if you know that it's a whistle start, definitely communicate it with your players. We're advising that to our officials. And then on the other side of it, when it's a self-start, so for example, I empty stick check in the midfield and you get the ball, that would be a self-start. So as the officials, we're advising them to just try and wait an uncomfortable amount of time, because if they say go, that's really no different than having a whistle. It's going to have that same sound, triggers their movement, so they're not really learning the flow of the game. So we've advised the refs I always just put my hand up and kind of give them, when they look at you like, ref, are you going to blow the whistle? You just kind of nod your head and give them the hand. If that doesn't work, fine, blow the whistle to get it going. But we are going to try and give the kids a fair amount of time and try to be really patient so that they get the opportunity to learn how the rule works. This is a learning curve for all of us, especially with some of our younger officials. So we'd encourage you guys to work with us and help be proactive with your players, because the more you understand it, the better it's going to be for everyone. Okay, teaching checking, we'll talk about that in a little bit. With the addition of modified checking, how will referees be enforcing safe checks? Will they be expected to issue yellow cards? Okay, so yellow cards, we'll be enforcing the rules as they're written. So when it comes to checking, modified checking means that, and we'll go into this in depth more, but modified checking means below the shoulders. And that's going to be the vast majority of what we see, because select is just such a small sample of what we do. So we're not going to talk about that tonight. But if you have questions about that, for sure, shoot me an email and we can chat. With respect to modified checking, the rules are pretty straightforward with yellow cards. So any contact to the neck or head is a mandatory yellow card that would be carded. Anything that we call a slash, where it's a little bit subjective, but you think about that textbook, starts at the butt, ends on the ground type of reckless swing. Oftentimes when players take it, it takes a few steps to regain their balance because they look like they're chopping down a tree. Those types of checks are mandatory cards. And we prioritize safety. So I don't anticipate any major issues with that. 2 cards would be a game ejection, because the second card upgrades to a yellow red. And to be honest, we're fortunate we don't have problems with this. And we're definitely hoping that that's going to be the case. We strongly encourage our coaches to be proactive. I can tell you, I coach as well. If my kid's throwing a swing, whether the ref calls it or not, we're going to have a conversation, and we'd love for your support on that as well. Because what you say matters significantly more than what the refs say. So you having our back with dangerous play, and conversely us having your back to keep the play safe, is the way that this is kind of going to work best for everybody. Can we sub on the whistle during a stop play? Yes. So one of the great things with free movement is they just get up and go. So even if it's a whistle start everybody else is allowed to move. So in theory, while I'm setting up an 8 meter, your players could be subbing if that's what you want to do. So now you can sub during the play. You can sub after a goal. If it's during the play, you do have to wait in the substitution box. So that player has to come all the way off before you enter. If it's on a goal, because we're doing draws, you're going to have that time and it can be a little bit more free flowing. Any other questions that I'm missing here? I think that's all of them. Awesome. You guys can definitely keep the questions flowing into the chat if you have more questions to talk about. Let's see here. Other rules that are important. Kicking. So this is new. I know depending on what rules you guys played with and what league you were a part of most recently, this may be new. Kicking the ball's allowed. You're going to learn to love it. If you're not a fan of it yet, you're going to love it because we just have so many ground ball scrums at the youth level. It really helps them kick the ball, get it out of trouble, and open up space so that a player can scoop it up instead of us seeing so many covers and empty stick checks and like the notorious like beehive that we all see at youth lacrosse so often. So that's been put in to help alleviate those problems. And we've seen a big positive play with it in the youth leagues that we've done lately. So hopefully you guys love it. The only thing you need to really know about that is you can't kick it into the goal. So I can kick it out of bounds. It would be a change of possession, just like with my stick. I can kick it to myself. I can kick it to space. I can kick it to a teammate. All of that's great. If it goes in the net, that's the only thing that would be a no-go. You can't score a goal that way. So it would just be the defense's possession in the goal crease, whether they have a deputy in as a shot blocker or whether it's just the closest, the goalkeeper's already in the crease. Either one would be the positioning for that. The only other big thing I wanted to just chat about quickly, because this one I think is a misconception with respect to covering. So you are not allowed to trap the ball. Like you'll see it oftentimes with people that play boys lacrosse where you rake it back and scoop it up. If a player is within a 4-meter radius, so someone is close enough that they could play the ball, I am not allowed to trap it no matter what. If they are more than that away, so let's say my teammate overthrows me, I'm running to a sideline to try and trap it before it goes out of bounds, and no one pursues me, so there's nobody within a distance that they could play that ball, that's a legal play. You are allowed to cover the ball in that instance, so that's something helpful to use as a skill for your players, and also something that a lot of people get confused on. Let me see, I got another question here. A couple of years ago, FGLL approved use of warp sticks at the 1-2 age. Are these allowed? Yeah, so the warps are legal. They look the exact same as the boys at the 1st and 2nd grade. They're a much deeper pocket. So those are legal for play. And I suspect we'll see a lot of them because I know at every clinic I've run, a lot of young kids have been using them. Any other questions? Or if there's anything specific to the rule card here, please feel free to send that, and then we'll jump into just checking out a couple of videos and we can open it up for more questions. All right, let's see here. All right, do you guys see my YouTube link? Let's see, I think we got it. Okay, so we're going to talk about the defensive. So we have a defensive 3-second rule to encourage good footwork on defense. It's a little bit challenging to call at times just because of the way that it's rare for a player to be able to really mirror sticks for 3 seconds, but I thought it might be helpful just to see this. I'm hopeful that the volume will come through.
3 seconds closely guarded. For safety and developmental purposes, players are not allowed to check an opponent's stick above her shoulder. In order to reward defenders for playing in good defensive position, the 3 seconds closely guarded rule exists. For the defender to earn the ball, she has to 1. Be in a position to make a legal check, including having 2 hands on her stick, if checking were allowed. 2. Hold the checkable position for 3 seconds. If this occurs, the official stops play and gives the ball to the defender. She is awarded the ball and has 4 meters of free space to restart. The 3-second count ends if the ball carrier moves her stick out of checkable position. Cover.
Okay, so big thing with that, the 2 hands on the stick is a really like that verbiage is specifically in it, and that's the advice that we've given officials. If it's 1 hand on the stick, even if it's marking it the whole time, because that wouldn't be a legal check in that league, we wouldn't even start the count. So what we're really looking for is I'm holding the ball here, defender has 2 hands on her stick and is legally marking me and just basically mirroring my stick. If the offense changes hands and now switches, so now the ball is here and the defender's stick is still on this side, the count would reset. So that's where it gets, I mean, if the offense stands still, it's really easy to get the call. They tend to be a little trickier with that. So any questions about that rule specifically?
Bring the ball.
Oh. Okay, so we'll talk now a little bit about modified checking. I'll give you their explanation and then I'll clear up anything about it.
Modified checking. Modified checking at this level is allowed. This is checking the ball carrier's stick when her entire stick is below her shoulder. Any check above the shoulder into the sphere or forcing the opponent's stick into the sphere constitutes an illegal check. The offender will be placed 4 meters behind and all players will be 4 meters away. Other major fouls.
Okay, so I just want to show you, because I think this is one that gets people a lot. If you watch this check, it may not necessarily look, for some of you, you're going to be like, well, yeah, of course that's illegal. But the big thing that gets people confused, even at the high school level, is as a defender, your stick can never, ever, ever travel in the plane above their shoulders. So ultimately, when this girl actually makes contact, I would argue that that is pretty darn close to below the shoulders. But because it starts through the cylinder above her head, and obviously the falling certainly doesn't help, that's one that can be a little confusing to people at times, because the contact itself really does happen pretty close to the shoulders. It's that she started chasing her here. And you'll see a lot of times, especially if somebody's beat in the midfield, I'm running, I get my stick above her head, I wait, and then I come down and away. And the coach is like, it was a beautiful check. 100% right. When it made contact, it was great. But the starting point of that was above her head and in her sphere. And that's why it's a no-go. So if you're going to chase them, wait, and you don't want to be poking anything above the head. So it is legal to, you'll sometimes hear the check from behind. That's not a rule. That's a hockey rule, and it pertains to body contact. What we're looking for is the height of where it starts, the proximity to the body, and the direction it goes. So height, meaning every piece of it, beginning to end, has to be below the shoulders. It can never come up. Proximity to the body, meaning out and away, anything that's coming in this space, we call this the sphere. Anything that's in there, well, it's above my shoulders, but if we're like right across her skin, a little close for comfort, a little too tight, that's going to be something that we would call dangerous. And then the last piece is where it ends, which is the part that every kid forgets, because they usually end slamming into the ground, and that's a hard no for us. So you want to think about making a check mark. I come down, I make contact, I come back up to the space. So sorry, you're looking at my bare hands, but down and away, down and away. And that would be totally legal, even if it's a hard check. That in itself is not a foul, but if it's a hard check that stops at your feet, I think it's probably fair. You'll probably end up with a card on that at the youth level. But if it's down and up, that's going to give your defenders the best opportunity to be rewarded, because they're showing, like, to me, if she's coming back up, she knows exactly what she's doing and she's extremely in control of her body. And that's really what we're looking for as officials. Does that help? Are there questions about checking that I can clear up for you guys? Awesome. Are there questions about anything else that I was just told to kind of open it up and chat, so don't be shy if you have questions.
I'll ask one. So, hey, Kaillie. So I guess what we usually just try to say is that, at least definitely at the youth level, when we're teaching the modified checking, is that you want to make sure that you're actually footwork first, and to make sure that you have the body position and the footwork and to focus on that first, not focus on the check. And if all of our players could do that, they would be able to then check in a safe manner and not in a reckless manner. And so I think that's, especially for our youth programs, it's recreational lacrosse. We don't want anyone getting concussions or hurt or tripped or anything. Like that's for us, in Wellesley, that's one of our biggest, concerns is the safety aspect of it, and to teach the good footwork and defense first, and the checking comes second.
Absolutely. And I think like a nice cue to sometimes think about, again, sort of, I'll say as a coach, but factoring in the reffing perspective, is if they're between your shoulders, it's probably going to be pretty good. When you start getting into things like across the body or detaining, it's like if as a defender, I keep that girl in between my shoulders, 99 times out of 100, what I'm going to do is legal because I've moved my feet to maintain that position. Once she gets out of that frame, as an official, I'm starting to think like, oh, she's about to lose. What have we got going on here? And it's usually that's when you start seeing across the body or too high out of desperation or a little nudge as they run past. So if your kids can keep them between their shoulders, I'm probably going to give you the benefit of the doubt because I'm like, okay, let them play a little bit. Let them be athletic. She's in control. Other questions? And especially if you guys have anything specific, I know some of the age groups vary, but if there's anything specific that I can clear up for you, please don't hesitate to reach out. Awesome. Well, that's all I got. So we're going to keep recording this. If you are shy or you want to stay on and chat, I'll be here. I'm booked till 8, so I'm happy to answer questions. But otherwise, I hope you guys have a great season. Please don't hesitate to reach out if there's anything that we can do to support you guys with officials. And if you have questions, I'm here till 8.
Callie, I think there were a couple more.
Go ahead.
I think there were a couple more that I see in the chat.
Yeah.
Like I think a good one was about like the poke check to the handle of the stick, which I know we get a lot, or like under the shoulder and such, because I think sometimes those are very hard to see if they're away from the body.
For sure. So as a general blanket statement, anything that is, and college coaches will flip when they hear this, but because here's the other thing I'll say. If you watch college lacrosse, love it, embrace it. It's so fun to watch. Forget it when you come to our fields because it is women's. I'll argue this till I played boys lacrosse until I was 17. I'll argue this till the death. Women's lacrosse at the Division I level is more physical than men's lacrosse at the Division I level, and you'll never convince me otherwise. So while I love that our kids get to watch that, it can definitely be a little confusing for them because what they let go, we just cannot. So with the poke checking, that's more of a men's term where your stick's coming into their body and they're most often trying to make contact between my hands. I mean, I'm stabbing at you right now. So that would be a foul. If the defender is poking out with the head of her stick coming towards that player's body, I would be calling checks towards the body. The other side of that, where I think sometimes and I was an attacker, so I love this, but the defense kind of gets the raw end of the stick is when, particularly at the youth level, an offensive player comes forward trying to go to the goal with her hands in front of her like this, and the defender is waiting and there's contact. So the sticks kind of collide. It has the same effect as that poke check, but the defense didn't make a motion to check. Therefore, the defense shouldn't be disadvantaged for that. That one's a really hard call to make as an official because it's so dependent on angles. But if we can really encourage our defenders to keep them inside their shoulders, keep a stick up and maintain space, we're going to really stress to the refs, like watch what the offense is doing. And more importantly, watch what the defense did. Because if her arms just do this, that's not a foul. If her arms do this after the contact, sure, we've got something to talk about. With respect to the hands, technically your hands are an extension of your stick. So if you're getting one, like a little tap in the knuckles, especially when you're shooting, that's not often something we'd call. If I'm whacking you in the bottom hand, I think you'd have a hard time arguing that you're going for the top of her stick. So those things are definitely, and if this is the motion, it's towards the body because I'm coming in. If it's up here and it's down and away, you can pull it off. The butt check, the end of the stick check that every lazy attacker like myself loves, is legal by the book, but is almost impossible to do legally. So it is in the book that you can check the bottom of their stick if it's not protected. But if I check this way to hit the bottom of your stick, that would be towards the body, which is illegal. If I lift the bottom of your stick and bring your stick head in towards your sphere, that's also dangerous. So if they're perfect with their angle and they kind of hit out this way, they can do it. It happens once every 300 checks. So my advice to you would be, I would not encourage your youth players to do it. High school kids start to get a little bit more dexterity and a little bit more control. Sure, but you're not going to you're going to catch a lot more whistles than you will not with that. So I would probably try to avoid those. Other questions about checking specifically? Okay, let me see. Oh God, I don't know how I missed all these. We got tons of these. Okay. We're shot over the line. Okay, so this one again, if you come from men's lacrosse, you're about to have your mind blown. This one always confuses people. So our boundary ball is different than the men's rule. The men's rule is close to the line in most, at least in, I don't know what the youth rules are, but this gets people caught up. In women's lacrosse, it's the closest to the spot where the ball crosses at the time where the ball crosses, which is a whole lot of words to tell you that if your team shoots and there's nobody behind the goal line, there's no scenario under the sun that you're getting the ball back. It's going to go to the goalie every time. If there's a race to the end line, it's the closest to where the ball crosses. So sometimes you'll see kids run to the end line and they're much closer, but they're way, way wide. It wouldn't, in boys lacrosse, it would be that player's ball. In girls lacrosse, chase the ball is what you wanted on a boundary ball. If it's a shot, chase it. If it's a pass, it's just whoever it touched last. So then that one's out. If we're using a shot blocker, does the defender who picks it up and passes the ball, is that pass one? Yes. So if you are using a shot blocker, basically that's your goalie alternative. So after she makes a big save, you can have one defender, only one, doesn't really matter who, come into the crease. They pick up the ball, and then once they get possession, the 10 count would start the same as if you had a goalkeeper in there, and she can either pass it to be the first one of your 3 count, or she can just run it out. You're still going to be subject to the 3 pass rule though. Are we doing draws? So we are going to do draws. We're going to figure it out. I think the kids are excited about it. The refs feel okay about it. We obviously want to make them as quick as possible, but for the most part, it's going to go pretty fast. You guys will be subbing. The refs will be far enough away from the players that we won't anticipate any social distancing issues. And then once the kids that are taking the draw are in, the ref will step in. We'll get them going pretty quickly. So for the most part, I think it's going to be normal lacrosse, which is pretty exciting. Do the rules align with high school? Pretty much, yes. The only thing that is different, high school is going to play quarters, which is new, and I'm excited about it. So we'll see. It's new for us. So I'm pretty excited. We'll see how that goes. And then our specific like 3 pass rule and that sort of thing are just specific to the league. But as far as like the vast majority of the rule book, it's all the same. Okay, we got did I miss anything about the poke check? Oh, one thing I'll say about checking that is often confused, and I teach this to my defenders because it's a little bit of an advantage. So legally, as a defender, you are allowed to check anywhere from their top hand up. So if I'm holding my stick at the very top of my plastic where the throat meets the shaft, all you get is my stick head. If I'm going for a ground ball with my 2 hands together at the butt end of my stick, you now legally are entitled to, you still have to be under control. You still have to be below my shoulders. You are legally entitled to check anything from my top hand up, which can be like a 3-foot target potentially. You still have, when kids see that, they usually swing for the fences, which would make it illegal, but the size of the target is dictated by where your top hand is. So choke up and ground balls. And if that were to hit you in the arm, that would definitely be a foul. Let's see. What's the rule about taking a hash mark on the 8-meter? So the defense now gets the hash. So if there's a foul, blue's getting the ball, the red defenders get the hash marks. So we're going to give them time to get set up. We'll probably communicate, especially in the early stages of this, because it is new. The only thing to know, and this is the same in high school, they're giving us guidance that you can't double stack the hash. So for example, blue's getting the ball, one red defender is entitled to the hash marks. You basically just like can't be on top of each other. So if red wanted to put another player next to them, so they have two players on each hash marks, sometimes you'll see the back defender push the front one. You're not allowed to do that. They're calling that a push. So just one player, she can run out. You just can't stack them for this year. And we just, obviously the kids want to compete for the ball and want to be able to play defense. We're just trying to manage it by using kind of our common sense of like, let's not be all over each other. And if you've watched some of it at the D1 level, let's not fight for these spots quite so. Be competitive, but we don't need to get crazy. So that's sort of the rule with that now going forward.
Callie, a question on the hashes.
Yeah.
If you said a blue player has the ball and there's two reds on opposite side and the red offending player behind,
Yep.
and if one of the two reds jumps the whistle, so then they have to then also go, does that leave that open hash, or can, because of free move and another red player can go replace?
So it's actually, this rule's kind of wild. You get a freebie. Your first one's pretty much a freebie if you go early as a defense. So we would just, on the first infraction, we would just reset it. Especially if by chance, like sometimes we'll do the awkward hand and like, we're like, oh, that was my fault. Sorry. We would reset that as well. If, you've done it 2 or 3 times, for sure, that player would be a second one behind and someone can fill that space because it's free. And they could even move, like if you were so advanced that you wanted to run plays, like they can be actively moving as long as they're outside of the 8 meter, which is, for those of us that have been around a while, a little bit of an interesting change, but gives it a little bit, I think they like to get going. So hopefully that'll be helpful.
Okay.
Let's see, where can I get a copy of the rule sheet? It's definitely posted on the founders website. And I know Paul sent it out, but if you want to shoot me an email, I can shoot it over to you as well. So my email is kb@centrallax.com. So if you guys need anything, please feel free to use that. Oh, somebody already posted it. Even better. Does the league pay refs separately? So each town does it a little different, just to make it confusing for you guys. The general idea is that the home team's responsible to pay. So your town director would be the best contact for that. I think most common is, I think people are being encouraged to use Venmo, and then, you can kind of just send it that night, but each town does do that a little different. So if you can't get an answer from your town director, let me know and I'll see if I can help, because we want to pay the refs, because then they'll come back, which is good for all of us. Not sure what's the rule on touching. Okay, so push. Sorry, go ahead.
If they're junior refs and they don't have Venmo, so do people just pay cash?
I think that's kind of on you guys, like on the towns to figure out how they want to manage it. I'm assuming checks would be the most common, but
I think Paul said send a check.
Oh, to the youth? Okay.
Yeah.
Or to the juniors? Okay.
Right.
Perfect. Good on that. Okay, so we got a question about basically contact on defense, which is always a question. So the way that we like to think about it as officials, in a perfect world, and some of this is dependent on angles, because I can tell you some horror stories of times that I thought I saw things, and then I saw the film after from a different angle and realized I had embarrassed myself a little bit as a ref. But basically what we're looking at is we want to try and see the space between. So if contact kind of looks like I've got offense and defense, and contact looks like this, for the most part, we're saying no foul, provided that the defense didn't extend their arms. So it's really just 2 athletes fighting for space and both bouncing out. If the stick is horizontal, that is always going to be a foul on the defense, even if they don't extend their arms, because we're not allowed to initiate contact. We're not allowed to make contact with a horizontal stick. And if there's any extension, that's an easy one for the defense. So meet and greet, no foul. Push by the defense where their arms are extending and they've kind of they're gaining ground and the offense is now losing ground. That would be something we're thinking about, a push. And then the other side of that is when they meet and you see the offense start to drive their feet. Usually their shoulder doesn't have to dip, but if a shoulder dips, that's usually a good sign that she's trying to back her out. So that's what we're really looking for. Cleanest way, and what I always try to teach, especially when I coach, I think about coaching for myself reffing. So I'm like, okay, like what would I want to see that would make this okay? And I think forearm contact is a really helpful concept because, again, as a ref, when I see a kid trying to make forearm contact, I'm not thinking out of control. I'm thinking defense is really hard and she's trying her best. I'm going to work with her on this a little bit, give her a little benefit of the doubt as long as nobody's getting hurt and there's no disadvantage to the offense. So if I were holding my, God, doing this backwards a little strange. So if I were holding my stick, you could either make contact with them with your bottom forearm, and now this hand is free to guide my stick in front of hers if she throws a pass, or I could make contact with my top forearm and do the same thing. So that way they're touching them. You can be physical. Like I always say, like we play clean and mean defense. We're going to touch them. We're going to let them know we're there. We're going to drive them out cleanly if we can, but we're going to be under control. And that's sort of I get it, defenders, it's an offensive world out there. But I think that if you can encourage your players to make contact with forearms, you're going to see a lot fewer fouls, because anytime there's a stick to body, it's just too easy to call. It's like, it just looks sloppy. If they're leaning, it looks sloppy. If they're horizontal, it looks sloppy. And I think you could also argue as a ref, if her stick's horizontal, is she really trying to make a play on the ball? Because the ball's up here and her stick head's way down here. So to me, you're just trying to hit that kid. You're not actually trying to stop her. And that's a pretty clear line for us as officials. Does that help? Okay, 3-4 on the same team. Can one team on the field have a goalie and the other have a shot blocker? Yeah, so we're trying to just roll with the punches because sharing equipment is tricky and full-time goalies is even trickier. So whatever your team needs to do for that game, even if it's a goalie for a half, a shot blocker for a half, totally fine. The other net, we just want something in the net, and it's okay if they don't match. The only thing that we're really concerned about at the younger ages is if you're using a 4x4, they've both got to be 4x4 goals or both 6x6, just so that it's consistent on both sides of the field. But shot blocker or goalie, totally up to you.
Amy, can I ask a goalie question?
Yep.
I know, sorry, I'm a college coach, so I have to like switch my brain, but for the goalies, are they allowed to go back in the crease after it's playable, or do they have to roll it in?
It has to be played once.
Okay,
so
it's the same rule.
Yeah. So throw out can come right back in.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Which always confuses everyone because I feel like it changes every 3 years.
Correct, and it's subjective anyway, so just asking for my own brain. Thank you.
Do they play with no shot clock for any of these leagues? So it's just going to be running time straight through. We're asking, especially if you have junior refs on the field, that the coaches keep time. I think you guys typically do that anyway. Some refs, like I personally, will keep time on the field because I find that if I know how much time's on the clock, I know what's going to happen next. In terms of like, oh, it's about 2 goal, close game, 2 minutes. It's about to get crazy. But if you guys can help with that, especially with junior refs, that would be awesome. So they can just focus on the safety piece and not have to worry about missing the game ending or us having a 40-minute half by accident. Let's see. What have we not talked about here? Rules card. Shot blocker again. Draws for all ages. What does a 3-pass rule look like at the youngest levels where girls struggle to complete passes? So great question. We base it off of attempts. So the only thing that we're not going to count is I'm holding my stick out and you like soup spoon it into my stick. Like we're trying not to drop liquid. We're not going to reward that because like there's no skill development whatsoever in that. If you want to do a flip pass, great. Awesome skill, will help them at the college level, will help them at the high school level. So that's totally fine. If it's an attempted pass, as long as there's no break in possession. So I throw to you, it goes 10 feet over your head, or it hits your stick and hits the ground. As long as you get that ball without the other team having it fully in their stick, that would count as a pass. We're asking the refs just to put fingers up and try not to scream shoot now so that the kids don't just grab it and hammer it home without too much thought. If you could help us on that, I know parents get excited. We get it. But when kids hear the word shoot, they just hammer it. They don't think about safety. So we still want to encourage good decisions. But basically, any attempt that's not broken up is going to count as a pass.
A quick follow-up question to that. So if blue team passes to another blue team and a different blue player ground balls it and picks it up, does that count as a completed pass? It wasn't the original person that was going to receive the pass.
Yeah, I would say no in that instance. If they're like right next to each other, it may just be like, oh, okay, like if they're next to each other. But if we're talking like long ground ball, errant pass, that would not count. We just continue it from where it was.
Okay, thanks.
Will the ref be counting 1 pass, 2 pass, 3 pass, or no?
Yeah, so we've asked them whenever, especially with the younger ones, we're really trying to emphasize both of them putting their fingers up and just trying to make it as clear as possible. In my experience, kids ask a lot. So we've been like, if they ask you 100, like answer the question, we're just trying to get them to not coach for you because I know that drives me crazy. So I'm sure it drives you crazy as well. Let's see. Rules cards, start, restart instead of taking the draw. So we will have the draw. There was, if you may be looking at an the rules card, it has been a process because the MIAA gave us draws, which we weren't really expecting. We decided to stay consistent with the rules based on the stuff that they'd come out with. So there will be draws. The only time you would see alternate possession would be 2 fouls that happen at the same time that are offsetting. So maybe I empty, stick check, you cover, we'll just go alternate possession. Or if something happens that the ref maybe can't determine what went out of bounds. But other than that, we're having draws, which the kids seem pretty psyched about. So it should be pretty good. Where does the 1 pass for 5-6 need it? So the 1 pass, if there's a pass rule, it can happen. Actually, before I put my foot in my mouth, let me just double check that. I'm pretty sure it's anywhere on the field though. Oh, I'm a liar. It is over midfield. So in the 5-6, that one does have to be over the midfield. And that's why you carry your rules card with you, because sometimes it gets confusing. I would definitely, we're encouraging refs to do this. I think sometimes, especially with our younger officials, they kind of feel like it's an us versus you guys thing, especially since we're encouraging kids that have come through your program to be the officials on your games. We're trying to really stress, like, this is a relationship. All we're trying to do is make sure these kids have fun in a safe, fair environment. So with respect to any of that stuff, like when we do the coaches meeting at the beginning, clarify those things, especially like it can be confusing. And sometimes especially like I'll tell you this weekend, I've called in a lot of favors from people to be going to this field and that field. So it may be the case that somebody did a college game yesterday, a club scrimmage in the afternoon, a 4th grade game, and then your 8th grade game. So 4 totally different sets of rules in those scenarios. So it's super helpful if we can all just like make sure we're all on the same page. So if you have questions about the pass rules, I think it's awesome to bring it up in the beginning and make sure that you understand what he or she is going to be calling, because when you understand what we're calling, things usually go better for everybody. Any other, I think if I missed anything in the chat, I definitely missed it completely. So please shoot it in again. Or if there's anything else that you guys want to chat about, feel free.
Callie, we talked a lot about the defensive type of penalties, but can you also just describe, because I know that there's a handful of offensive penalties like charges or also offensive almost illegal contact. So can you kind of describe that for the participants?
Yeah, so charging is basically anything that's displacing the defense, which is kind of the one we talked about with dropping you'll see it around the crease the most often. They drop their shoulder. It looks like a bowling ball coming in. Unfortunately, we are not allowed to do that. The other one that you'll see is typically, so picking is legal. We see it more and more in youth lacrosse, which is awesome. And college coaches love to hear that about youth kids. So similar to basketball, but not the same rule. There is nothing in our rule book about feet being planted. So I hear coaches yell that one a lot. Not a rule. There's nothing about feet planted. What we're looking for as an official when there's a pick, so basically in case anybody's not a basketball or box lacrosse person, offensive player, defensive player, this player maybe has the ball, maybe does not, and an additional offensive player comes and stands here to obstruct that person. So now when this offensive girl turns, she runs the defender into her, springing herself free. That kind of contact is legal. What we're looking for is, did the defender have time and space to avoid the contact? So if I'm here and the pick is set on me right here, kind of, and I can see her. She knew the contact was there. She had time and space to it. So even if I turn and there's like a physical bump, I'm going to let that go because you knew she was there. You could have chosen to go around her. You turned into her to try to go through her. The one that gets tricky is the one on the back. So if they're setting a pick directly behind me, that in of itself is not necessarily a foul. But if I turn and get rocked and I had no idea and no opportunity, time and space to avoid that contact, that's when it would become a foul. So sometimes you'll see kids on the back. I turn, I see her. That's not a foul. That's a really well executed pick. And I would say good picks are ones when there is a little bit of contact, but what we're looking for is similar to what we think about with defensive contact. She's in control. The person knew she was there. There's no displacement. If you're seeing a stick drop, that's an illegal pick. The stick's got to be up. You can't make horizontal contact. You can't hook her outside of your frame if she's running past you. Or the one that you'll see the most is like they stick their knee out. Like, oh no, the defender's getting around. I'll just stick my knee out and that'll stop her. A, very easy to get hurt like that. And B, like those ones tend to be the ugly collisions, even though they have really good intentions. But once you set it, stay still, let your teammate run her into you. So that's kind of, and if there's any extension by the offense, that's kind of a no-brainer. So it's almost in some ways the same rule, offense and defense, just when you have the ball, when you're stopping the ball.
How about when girls have the ball and they're backing themselves into the deep to try to get to the goal?
Yeah, so that would be categorized as a charge. So it's the same concept. So instead of maybe dipping my shoulder and sort of shoving her through the door, I back my butt end in. I was well known for this one. So I know this call well, but backing in is a no-go. Anytime that they have established position and you are backing them out of it or moving them out of it, displacing them from that space, that's where we want to think about. Offense displacing is a foul. Defense displacing is a foul. Meeting and bouncing is athletic lacrosse, and that can take all form. Like there will be contact that is not a foul, and that's a really hard concept for everyone to understand as we're all learning, especially at the youth level, because sometimes they just, depending on where they are puberty-wise, might look a little ugly. So what one of your sixth graders can do, the other one may not be able to do it just because she doesn't have enough control over her body yet.
Thanks. Oh, there was another one on the mercy rule.
I actually am not 100% on that. I think what we've typically done, is it listed on here? I feel like what we've typically done is if it's five or more, the team that is below, you guys that have been with the league can help me on this. Yeah, so 5 or more, if the spread is 5 or more, the team that is behind can either elect to take possession or they can just play the draw and just play it out. It's totally up to you. One thing I'll say is I have been on the receiving end of a few beatdowns in my day. The refs usually won't know the score. They're not going to be keeping score for you. So there are times where I'll think it's a close game and I'm like, oh my God, it's 10-0. So if that's something that you're keeping track, if you're like, oh God, I'm going to get yelled at after this, like we've got to keep this. There's nothing wrong with you approaching the ref and just saying, hey, since we're down by 5, can we take possession? Please do that. Do it nicely. No problem. I guarantee you they won't know the score and it won't even be on their radar most of the time because that's just not what the last thing they're thinking about is the score of the game. But I know your kids are thinking about it because they care about that stuff a ton. So 5 goals, just let the ref know if you'd like possession. And if you just want to play it out, that's fine too. We usually discuss mercy rule at the beginning. Yeah. And again, that's a great thing to talk about in the, especially if I know you guys know your competition probably better. So if you show up and you're a true town team and you see 10 club kids, probably a good option to just like be proactive with that conversation to make it as fun for everybody as we can. Goalie deputies. I'm going to double check with Paul just in case I get this wrong. My understanding of what we're going to do is at the 1st through 4th grade level, the goalkeeper is not allowed to be marked. So they're calling that, I think the verbiage of it was a little confusing. I think it's like free clear to teammate.
Yeah, that's what it was on the rule card.
We're just moving everybody out of the 8 meter. There may not be an 8 meter on your field. The intention is like, let's just let this kid get 1 rep and then we can play. Everywhere else, you're allowed to pressure the goalie. So from 5th grade upwards, if you want to pressure the goalie, you can. I believe we are doing no goalie deputies from 5th grade forward. But if by chance I'm wrong on that, I just wrote it down. So if by chance I'm wrong on it, I'll definitely have Paul send out a clarification, or I'll send one out to you. But that's my understanding. It's been a bit.
I also think that's right. We discussed this at one of the founders leagues, asking about the deputies in general. And it was, at least as of a while ago, no deputies were allowed, but they did make that accommodation for the younger grades that they could have a free clear.
Perfect. And if we're wrong, we'll let you know. But I think no news is good news. Any other questions? I think I got everything in here. Awesome. Well, I'll stay on in case anybody's shy. If you guys have questions, have a wonderful season. Please don't be a stranger. If you guys have issues with your refs, I'm your person. I love reffing. I love coaching. I lose my mind sometimes. So I understand. Nobody understands the struggle on both sides of that relationship more than me. So please don't hesitate to reach out. We want to do a good job and we want to make sure your kids are having a great experience. So don't hesitate to loop us in if there's something that we can help you guys with.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Good luck.
Good luck,
I have
everyone.
one question.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's kind of random, but I've experienced this in the past with this age group, the youth age group. A lot of these young players are getting piercings, their ears pierced.
Yep.
And at times, they show up and they have band-aids over them, doing everything. And I experienced a ref who forced the girl to either remove them or not play, even though we had them covered up. What's the thought on that?
So the ref is actually correct. And I actually talked about this with our younger kids in our rule clinic, because it happens all the time, especially at the high school level where they're sassy. And I mean, I have a nose ring. I was one of those kids. So I know, again, I'm the kids that are a problem. I was those kids. So I understand them. They're not allowed to tape them. So that is correct. It's, if you have earrings, they do have to come out. If you have a nose ring, technically, if you had a belly button ring, an anklet, everything has to come out. The only exceptions are medical or religious. So I grew up in an indigenous community was next door. So they would have some tribal bracelets that players would wear. They were allowed to tape those, or I feel like I never see, maybe these don't even exist anymore, but medical alert bracelets. I couldn't tell you the last time I saw one, but those are allowed to stay on. We would want those to stay on and be taped. Anything in the ears has got to come out. And if they pull I'll just tell you, me as a ref, if they wear their headband over their ears, I already know they have earrings under there. So that's like a telltale sign. But that is technically the rule. The piercings do have to come out. And if they tell you they can't, they're lying. They can. Trust me. I've done it.
Thank you.
Kelly, can I ask for clarification on 2 of the questions I had asked?
Sure.
One of them was on the pass over midfield for the 5-6. Could that start behind the midfield and then go over the midfield? And does that count as a 1 pass, or does it have to start after the midfield?
Both have to be over.
Both have to be over.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the pass is initiated over the 50 and has to continue to go for, I'll call it the 50, whatever our midline is on the field. And then the pass has to continue to go forward.
Okay, got it.
Or I guess lateral is fine too, just not backwards.
And then we were having a debate on the modified check. I had it that you can't start above the head, or could you start above the head as long as it's outside the sphere?
I would say subject to interpretation and angles. So I think that's where you start getting most of, if it starts really high, even if you're far out, it just is going to look ugly, because now your check that would have been short and quick, even if it's still the same velocity and the same kind of angle, it's now going to be a whole lot longer. So I would say you're in a little bit of a gray area. With an experienced ref, they may give you the benefit of the doubt, but I would say by and large particularly the town level, your best bet is to really try and be consistent with keeping it below the shoulders, just to simplify it as much as possible for the officials and eliminate any oops, because that's really our main concern with it starting up here, is especially muddy fields, which we know we're going to have because we always do, tired kids who have played club and club soccer and 2 games that day. It usually ends badly. So I would say, like, you may be able to get away with it sometimes being wide, but I would encourage you to try and have start and finish below the shoulders, because I think that's going to be your best bet to not draw a whistle on it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, no problem.
Ellie, what if, on attack, if the team gets 3 passes, they shoot and the goalie, like, it bounces off of them and like they don't catch it and it ends up back in the circle or whatnot, in the 8 meter, if the attack picks it back up, can they still go back to goal, or do they have to start over with the 3 passes?
It's funny seeing reactions, because like half of you were like, yup, and half
Yeah,
of
I feel like
no.
it's like called like 50-50, like from
like
it's like,
I'm gonna write this one down just to make sure I turn my brain back on with this, because I will be finding myself on some youth fields this summer. My understanding and interpretation of that rule right now would be that would be legal, as long as the only way that they would not be able to shoot immediately would be if the ball went back over the restraining line by the other team. So if the defense got possession, got it over the 50, when we recovered it, we'd need 3 passes. But as long as we in our offensive zone, my understanding of this, my first youth game, I got ripped for this. So that was how I learned it. Because I was like fresh off a NESCAC game and was like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm getting yelled at in a 5th grade game, and they're right, like, not good. So that's my understanding, is that in that case, the offense is allowed to shoot again. But if I'm wrong about that, I'll have Paul send a clarification.
okay.
Any other questions?
I have a quick question, and I'm sorry if it was covered before. I was doing some work stuff and getting kids ready for bed. But the flip pass for the 9, the goalie makes a save. She passes it to some girl, and then 2 girls will stand next to each other, and they flip it to each other 3 times. Is that considered a pass?
Yes. I would say, like, I'm a big flip person in general. If you watch some of these called, like, Syracuse has an offense right now that they're running that is basically like running a 3-man weave, like what we all did in basketball class.
Yeah.
Flipping. So it's a skill. It works pretty well. I would say the only thing that we're like, and I hear what you're saying in terms of like my advice to you as a coach is like, coach them to be skilled. Like a flip every now and then is great. Let's learn to throw.
I don't mind,
What we're
them
shutting
going
down is the like,
yeah.
the like dump into the pot. Like I kind of described as like, if it's like we're sharing a liquid and there's not going to be a spill, that's probably a no-go. But if they're popping it up and they're stacked, yeah, like I would say, like as refs, we would let that go, because I think the intention is to share the ball. The dump is like, let's get this girl a goal.
Yeah. I think the spirit of the rule needs to be.
Agreed. Yeah. And that's like, that was the guidance with the refs when we spoke. Like the guidance was, if it's a skill, like if it's, I mean, the first thing I teach kids, and especially for you guys that work with 1st through 4th graders, especially if they have beginner sticks with crummy old beginner pockets, they just can't catch. Like, it's just, I can't catch with it. So, flips with them is great. 7th and 8th grade, I might not have the same opinion of how those flips are executed. And I think that speaks to the spirit of the rule, which I think is what you're talking about.
Okay. Thank you, Kelly.
No problem. Anyone else? Awesome. Well, thank you guys. Oh, wait, I just saw some. What's your best setup? What's your best position setup for 7 and 8 teams? Like in terms of how many on the field?
Yeah, like, I mean, are you like a 3-5-3?
I like to keep it, I'm like a big keep it simple, because I just find I've coached with people that love 3-5-3, and I'm just like, well, who's staying? Like, I just think like they're going to be offside all the time. So I think you're better served to do 4 attackers, 3 midfielders, and 4 defenders, just because it's simple. There are, I mean, you'll know better your kids, and if they're the kind of kids that can grasp communicating at the restraining line, it certainly is more effective, because then it's reading the play and reacting. I would just say then your team communicates better than my high schoolers. So my advice would probably be 4-3-4.
Okay.
But
That's what I usually do, but I was like, maybe we'll try it, but I don't think we're there.
yeah, it's hard. It's really, I've had to do it out of necessity at times, and it's tough.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Awesome. Well, I'll hang out if anybody has a last minute question, but otherwise, thank you guys so much. Good luck this weekend, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Callie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Actually, I have one last question.
Okay, great.
And I'm coaching for the first time. So it's, and I'm coaching the 5-6.
Okay.
But the question is really around the 8 meter and the critical, a foul in the critical scoring area. So I get that, someone's going to be awarded, the offense is going to be awarded the ball we put on the 8 meter. But what I don't know is, kind of like if it's like in foul shoot or like in basketball and foul shooting, how many people can be on that fan? Because I see all the hash marks. So help me understand, what that should look like or what that typically looks like on a break.
A visual. So I'm not just where is it? Presentation. Okay. So ours is I would say ours is much more simple, which is nice. It's kind of a free for all, other than you can't really get on top of people is kind of the gist of it. So this doesn't have the lines, but basically we have center hash, which is right down the middle.
Yep.
Let's see. So we've got center, first inside, pardon my horrific drawing, and second inside on both sides. And those are each separated by 4 meters. And then we have the floating hash. So if there's a foul inside, we're going to get that 8 meter on the closest hash. So whichever hash is closest. So if it happens here, we're going to set the offense up here. If it's a major foul, the defender would be behind. And then the defense is entitled to the adjacent hashes. So you are definitely one defender here, definitely one defender here. And then everybody else just basically has to clear this. So your defenders are entitled to be next to them, and everybody else can go. So in theory, you could have 5 of your girls right here if you wanted to, or it could be what you'll typically see is just matching up to make sure that you're not giving up a secondary option. But the only specific rules is ball carrier on a hash, fouler behind, and defense is entitled to the adjacent spaces, but you don't necessarily have to take them.
What everyone else has. So you can have a maximum essentially of 3 people on the fan or on the 8 meter fan, and everyone else has to be off that.
They can be on it, just not inside.
Okay.
So you could have basically what you'll most often see is kids just like spread out kind of around this semicircle all over. And most often I would say it's like blue-white, but it's not specified the same way that it is in a basketball free show.
Perfect. Thanks for that clarification.
Yeah, no problem.
All right. Thanks again. Appreciate it.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Earring guy again.
Yeah.
Okay, so outside the 12 meter, like you come across the restraining line. And we had this happen where the girl just shot on goal and ripped the shot, and they took the goal away because they said it was a dangerous shot.
Yep.
And awarded the goalie the ball to clear it.
Yep.
What is the actual rule to shoot outside the 12 meter?
So there's 2. I would say as a general blanket statement, proximity isn't necessarily a problem. It's more about safety. So sometimes people use the terms dangerous shot and dangerous propel interchangeably. They're actually 2 different things. A dangerous shot is, like, I would say the one you see most often is the attack. Like, I catch the ball and I just turn and hammer it right on the doorstep and I smoke the goalie in the face. And she doesn't have time to react to the ball because, like, I whipped. I had no control. I didn't know where I was sending it, and I hit her in the head. That would be a dangerous shot. That would be the goalie's ball. and I would go 4 meters behind the crease. A dangerous propel, so that one's just like a foul on the field. A dangerous propel is a mandatory yellow card. So the most common one that you'll see is a defender is in shooting space and I shoot it anyway. And especially if you watch college lacrosse, you'll see lots of these that they don't call, where like the defender has to duck or the ball flies kind of above her shoulder and through to the cage. If it hits her, no question, that's a definite yellow card. But most likely, I'm guessing from this scenario that you're describing, there was probably a defender. They probably thought that a defender was in danger, and that's why they would upgrade it to a card. Was it a card or was it just a possession?
It was, so she had a clear avenue towards the goal, and the way she pegged the goalie, and that's,
that might be, it might be to protect the goalie. How old are they on the younger side too?
This was 5'6", I believe.
Yeah, I would say that's probably more of like preventative officiating to protect the goal. I may not necessarily officiate it that way, but we do definitely stress to them the importance of putting safety first. And I think a lot of, especially because shooting from the outside is relatively new in our, for when I was a kid, it was just not allowed because girls just couldn't do it. And I think now we're hitting a point where we're like, these girls are strong, these girls are legit, and they can hammer the ball from outside. So it's really just about those offensive players understanding that no matter what, I have a responsibility to keep the goalie and the defense safe. But if the lane's open, I say let it fly. Awesome. Then we are, if that's everything, I guess we are a wrap for tonight. So thank you guys so much.